The history of sports may extend as far back as the beginnings of military training, with competition used as a mean to determine whether individuals were fit and useful for service. Citation needed. Team sports may original research have developed to train and to prove the capability to fight, and also to work together as a team, military unit. The physical activity that developed into sports had early links with ritual, warfare and entertainment. Study of the history of sport can teach lessons about social changes and about the nature of sport itself, as sport seems involved in the development of basic human skills. Citation needed. Compare play. As one delves further back in history, dwindling evidence makes theories of the origins and purposes of sport more and more difficult to support.
Here we have Freemasons scripted sports with these two puppet actor athletes that only do what they're told. In the Masonic language of Gematria, just using straight up basic English, where M is the 13th letter of the alphabet, M equals 13, I is the 9th, Micheal Jordan equals 113. Doing the same exact thing, Kobe Bryant, K is the 11th, O the 15th, 113. Micheal Jordan's final game would be on April 16th, 2003. Kobe's final game would be April 13th, 2016. In Sumerian Gematria, where you multiply everything by 6 in Ritual to the Beast, both of these names equals 678. These two men would play their final basketball games exactly 678 weeks to the day of each other. On April 13th, the night Kobe retired, Splash Brothers Steph Curry and Klay Thompson scored a total of 678 three-pointers that night. Kobe retired with his scripted poem, Dear Here we have Freemasons scripted ritual sacrifice. Yesterday I said that there would be a ritual sacrifice of someone in the mainstream media based on the color of their skin, Jesus Christ, the Masonic allegory, and God's chosen son in the sky, dead at the age of 33. Now early this morning we are receiving news of Tyrone Moss, dead at the age of 33. I also brought up how the coming ritual sacrifice will be a ritual to the moon and today's lunar eclipse. The word moon, just using straight up basic English where A is 1 and Z is 26, moon equals 57. Tyrone Moss would die on the day that leaves 157 days left in the year. Tyrone Moss is reported to be born on November 19th, 1984. On the day of his death, he is exactly 1,757 weeks and 5 days old. The Super Bowl was held on February 4th, 2018. He dies exactly 174 days. Here we have Freemasons scripted professional sports. Zach Miller injures his leg while attempting to catch a 25-yard pass. While being blocked by number 25, Zach Miller celebrated his 33rd birthday on October 4th. Breaks his leg 25 days after October 4th. In the Masonic language of Gematria, Miller equals 33, Trump equals 25. Trump was born June 14th. He breaks his leg 137 days after his last birthday. 137 is the 33rd prime number. He would make his NFL debut on August 17th, and the first game of the season would be September 13th. These games 8 years and 74 days, 8 years 47 days before the injury. Trump equals 88, 47, and 25. Preseason debut, regular season debut, first.
What you guys just watched was a breakdown of Freemasons and how they do their rituals through sports and your faces. Sorry there were 1-minute Instagram videos, but I am sure you guys get the point. Now on to this.
I'm not fond of the NFL whatsoever. I mean, I used to be, but now I just want to see them exposed. And if that pisses you off, then so be it. I would suppose that there's only so much you could teach somebody that's utterly fascinated by grown men throwing and catching a ball. If you're still with me, let's get into it. Bread and circuses. The phrase is used to describe the generation or creation of public approval, not through exemplary or excellent public service or public policy, but through diversion, distraction, or the mere satisfaction of the immediate shallow requirements of the populace. This phrase was used by a Roman writer to deplore the declining heroism of the Romans after the Roman Republic ceased to exist and the Roman Empire began. two things only the people anxiously desire: bread and circuses. The government kept the Roman populace happy by distributing free food and staging huge spectacles. During the reign of Claudius, there were 159 official holidays on the Roman calendar, a reality that's not conducive for productivity. Idle time and poverty are two ingredients that fuel crime. As a result, the emperors sought ways to keep the masses entertained. They turned increasingly to sport. Roman leaders used sport activities to train soldiers and provide the masses with entertainment spectacles. For the Romans, sports became a show, a dramatic event staged for the purpose of diversion. Rome's citizens had become lazy. They had transformed into a nation of spectators, more content with watching other people play sports and athletics than performing such activities themselves. It could be argued that the United States has become a nation of spectators, much like in ancient Rome. Another thing that I found interesting, on the next page it says, during a halftime or a lunch break, executions would be performed against those convicted of capital offenses. Burning at the stake or crucifixion was a common method of execution. These also served to entertain the Roman spectators. On November 6, 1869, Rutgers and Princeton played what was billed as the first college football game. However, it wasn't until the 1880s that a great rugby player from Yale, Walter Camp, pioneered rules changes that slowly transformed rugby into the new game of American football. Walter was a skull and bones. If you do a quick search on him, you'll find a few other names of people that helped create American football. Those names are Amos Alonzo Stagg, Pop Warner, and Fielding Yost, all of which either belong to Skull and Bones or Freemasons. After the NFL was created in 1922, most, if not all, of the earliest franchises had strong ties to the horse race industry and gambling. That seems nothing less than common sense. I would love a smoking gun, but seriously, rich people trying to get richer? Common sense. I did find that Burt Bell was a Phi Kappa Sigma, which is another Skull and Bones type fraternity.
Micheal Jordan was poisoned for the flu game?
Yes, 100% poison for the flu. Everyone called it a flu game, but we sat there and we were in the room. We were in Park City, Utah, up in a hotel. Room service stopped like at 9 o'clock, and he got hungry, and we really couldn't find any other place to eat. So we ordered he said, hey, so the only thing I could find is a pizza place. We ordered pizza. They come to deliver it. 5 guys come to deliver this pizza. And I'm just take the pizza, and I tell him, I said, I have a bad feeling about this. 2 o'clock in the morning, get a call to my room, come to the room, he's curled up in a fetal position. We're looking at him, finding the team physician at that time, and immediately I said, it's food poisoning, guaranteed.
In October 1993, just one day before the start of training camp for the Chicago Bulls' 1993-1994 season, Micheal Jordan, widely considered to be the greatest basketball player of all time, announced his retirement from the NBA. The announcement came as quite the shock, considering Jordan was only 30 years old, in the prime of his career, and was dominating the NBA. Jordan was also coming off a three-peat just 17 months after his retirement. Jordan returned to play out the rest of the season with the Bulls, and as many of you know, would later go on to achieve a second three-peat, ending in 1998 before he retired for good. Those are the facts, but what has puzzled many is the why. Why leave a sport when you're at the top? Especially when you consider the fact that Jordan is famous for being intensely competitive, taking pleasure in not just beating his opponents, but dominating them.
While some might call them rumors or urban legend, the all-knowing wrestling fans would be interested in some of the most out-of-this-world notions that this group is controlling or has controlled and had a hand in wrestling history as we know it. According to WhatCulture.com, the Illuminati, sometimes called the New World Order, and has been accused of using media such as WWE to control minds, influence behavior, and change emotional responses. Yes, professional wrestling is actually thought of as a means of brain manipulation. Take a second there. Ultimate Warrior dying just a short time after he was inducted into WWE's Hall of Fame and mending fences with Vince McMahon. The time of his passing, plus the cryptic message he delivered the Monday after WrestleMania 32 years ago, is something we have not forgotten. There are many who believe Warrior knew his time was coming to an end. At one point during his speech, Warrior apparently made the Mono Cornuto symbol with his hand, otherwise known to hard rock fans as the Devil's Horns. This was supposedly a sign that he knew something evil was around him and he was trying to let everyone know. The Illuminati and or the Freemasons kill celebrities as blood sacrifices, or have those celebrities kill one of their family members or closest friends as a blood sacrifice in order to keep what they have.
About 100 years ago, this big organization with many branches, they wanted to rule the world basically using Britain as a nucleus of a system, an embryo, which also was going to be joined with the US under the Anglo-American establishment, wrote about the kind of culture and the changes of culture over a 100-year period that they would actually design, implement and bring in. And H.G. Wells talked about it too. He talked about arenas. He says arenas could be put up across the world for sports, for instance. Now at that time, sports was something that children, school children were into. Adults became adults and got onto adult things. So it was unimaginable at the time that people could actually believe that there was even a need for adult sports and entertainment, never mind having arenas built across the world. But he said we can do this, and foist basically a sports culture for the males. And because the average man was to become more disengaged from his own destiny as the expert class arose, it was decided that the males would get their outlet basically, gradually becoming helpless as males through sports. Therefore they'd have a tribal team they could identify with, they could cheer them on as they were winning. In their own personal lives, they were getting nowhere. They were getting disenfranchised in a sense as experts took over decision-making for them in all kinds of fields. So this was psychology at use, planned before they even implemented the sports.
That's why they pay athletes these fantastic salaries. I was listening to the radio the other day. They just contracted to pay one player on one team $6 million a year. Can you believe this?
And why is that?
It's the Roman circus. What does the emperor do when the people become restive, and when the people are asking questions, and when the people don't like the policies of the emperor? He sends them to the circus. He creates a circus. He builds a giant coliseum, and he begins to throw the Christians to the lions. And he has great chariot races and football games and basketball games, all to keep the idiots preoccupied with things that don't mean anything in the scheme of the entire world, so that they don't have the time to learn what the truth is, so they don't ever get smart enough to learn how they're being manipulated, so they don't ever question the emperor. I know men who don't know anything in the world except who plays third base for the Mets, and they think that's a great accomplishment. And they meet and pat each other on the back and bond and go have cocktails and talk about what this guy that plays third base for the Mets did in last night's game. It's sad. It's really sad.
When radio came along, of course, they used that to the maximum. Sports for the men, soaps basically for the women, and then in came television, as I say, with its alpha state, its hypnotic state. And sure enough, around the 1960s, really 50s and 60s, it took off. It really took off. And men became glued on Saturday nights to the sports shows. A culture industry, which is called by its own the culture industry. The Soviet Union had a department called the culture industry. Their actors and directors were called the cultural leaders, because they would, like a computer, people like computers, all you have to do is keep giving them new updates every so often, and you can change an entire country or a nation or a block of nations. We're all getting the same upgrades at the same time. along certain paths. Today we call it political correctness. Most people want to belong to their peer group. They want to be the same as everyone else when it comes to opinions. In fact, they judge their own personal sanity by bouncing ideas off their neighbors and friends who will answer back and agree on these same topics in kind. It doesn't matter if the topics or what you're given are facts or utter nonsense, as long as everyone agrees at the same time. You'll say, well, I'm sane, and your friends will all agree because they've had the same information given to them. If it's on TV and a famous face says something, then it must be true. He doesn't have to show you facts or anything else. You've been brought up with these faces. That's why they keep these guys on television into their 70s and 80s. You've grown up with this father figure who's on television every night at 6 o'clock, in your house, in your room, staring right at you. And he's a father figure. Would he tell you a lie? So you naturally never suspect him. And this same man will lead you through new topics. He'll introduce experts on the topics. They'll have a little summary at the end of every talk, and you are now left with the conclusion that's presented to you. You don't arrive at it, it's given to you, and it's good enough for you. We're programmed today perfectly, just like machines. We tie this in with the Brzezinski. Brzezinski said in 2 Ages. Now this guy was way up with the NSA. He's a master geopolitician. He admits he works in 20, 50-year periods to do with geopolitics in other countries. But he said himself, the public will shortly be unable to think or reason for themselves. He was meaning by that the form of information that was given to them, the type, the formulas that were in use then in the 1970s. He says eventually they'll be unable to think or reason for themselves. And eventually, he said, they will expect the media to do all their thinking and reasoning for them. Well, that's happened today. That's why people today can't think outside of the programming from television. This is a scientific dictatorship, which Bertrand Russell said, and the Huxleys said, both Aldous and Julian Huxley said they would bring in the scientifically controlled society.
When 150 of the most powerful men and women in the world can meet in secret in Baden-Baden, Germany, and plot the fate of billions, and nobody even cares about it. But 6 football players go to lunch together, and it's in the headlines across the country. You have a reflection of the society in which that exists. And it is a sick, sick society that is doomed to self-destruction.
So based on that scenario, there's some truth into what these men are looking at.
Absolutely, and that's what makes me so sick, is that I'm trying to wake up a people who on a daily basis are proving the ones that I'm warning them about to be right.
Mm-hmm. Well, so that even though a minority, there are people out there that you recognize are awake to this, if they don't do something about it, they will lose that ability to be free in that way.
That's correct.
Whether they might think, well, I don't need to worry about it because I know what I know and I'm fine.
That's
It doesn't
right.
work that way. There's a connection here to everything.
That is correct. That is absolutely correct.
Okay guys, that was our video. What did you think? Let us know. Don't forget to share the video and subscribe. Thanks for watching. We got more great content coming up soon. See you in the next video.